Welcome back to America's Finest Sports. This is not a Friar Talk Tuesday, but we are all here together. This is also going to be broadcasting on Friar Talk's YouTube as well. But today we're going to talk about fantasy football. We haven't really talked about fantasy football as us three in quite some time, but we wanted to bring it up. We're actually recording right now during a Padres game, so this is a rarity. The Padres are winning big, so not a game that's a very close one right now. But we're going to be talking about fantasy football for a little bit. I'm going to basically be doing a little bit of a draft guide for guys that we like. So my thought on how we're going to explain it is we're going to talk about running backs, going to talk about wide receivers, going to talk about quarterbacks, tight ends, and then maybe we'll throw in a couple defenses at the end. But honestly, how are you guys feeling about, this upcoming fantasy season? And if you're looking at running back, what's your strategy? We can start with you, Isaac. We'll go to Chase, and then we can come back to me. But, what are your guys' strategies, and are there any specific players that you guys are targeting?
So, a running back, I got to leave with at least one in the first 3 rounds, preferably two. We just did a salary cap auction draft, so like I haven't exactly gone through round for round stuff like that. But the past few years, I've gone running back, and that's only because the wide receivers were really deep, and I knew I could probably get a wide receiver one or at least a safe wide receiver one in the third and the fourth round. But I think kind of this year you can steer in the direction where if you're in the first round and let's go with Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler. Maybe not even Eckler. But let's say those first three are gone. You should absolutely take Justin Jefferson. 100%. That is the one guy that I'm definitely going after. Those three are gone. Now, after those running backs, the running backs I like, I think Dalvin Cook is kind of going for a massive discount in some drafts. I think in a regular home draft, you'll see him go in the top 6, top 7. But, I mean, in some other drafts, he's going back in first round, early second. And I kind of think it's justified just because a lot of people are scared about his injuries, which every single year, you can probably expect Dalvin Cook to miss a solid 2 games, something like that. But the 2 previous years before last year, he had scored 16 touchdowns in each of those. Last year, he scored 6. Everything tells me that those 6 are going to at least double. That's going to double minimum. So I'm expecting big things from Dalvin Cook, and I think a lot of people are scared of that new Kevin O'Connell offense where there's going to be a lot of passing. But, I mean, out of the backfield, I think he's going to be the primary weapon when it comes to the passing game, and he's going to be the number 2 option in that. I think he's going to be the number 2 option in that offense after Justin Jefferson. And if you had told me years ago that there'd be somebody that overlapped Dalvin Cook as a number one option in the offense, I think you were insane. But Justin Jefferson is that good. So if the 3 guys I mentioned before are gone, get Justin Jefferson. Another guy I like, there's honestly a lot of guys that I like. I like Aaron Jones a lot just because I know he has a lot of receiving upside, does really good with Devontae Adams out. Javonte Williams I like. I think people are kind of drafting him at his floor. I think like running back 17, running back 13, something like that. And I think that's his floor considering he was like the running back 17 as sharing a 50-50 split with Melvin Gordon. So Gordon gets hurt, you got yourself a top 5, top 10 running back. And remember, Gordon gets hurt misses at least 2 to 4 games a year. But yeah, I think those are kind of the first 3 guys that pop off. Of course, I mean, I drafted Alvin Kamara. You're either all in or you're all out on Alvin Kamara. You're either scared he's going to get suspended or you want to win. I know which one I want to do.
I probably would draft Derrick Henry ahead of Justin Jefferson. That's me personally. You saw what he did last year. I know they're probably going to ride him into the ground again this year. And he's built for it. He's just sort of built differently than every other running back out there. So, I probably wouldn't take Justin Jefferson 4. I'd probably go Derrick Henry. I'm with Isaac. Whatever you guys do, not do the 0 running back strategy. It doesn't work. It really doesn't. You look at a lot of the backfields and you're going to go, okay, if I do not get at least 2 solid running backs, I may be screwed out of the entire season, because if one of them gets hurt and you're down to 1, there's not a lot of good options after that. I mean, you have a couple of guys that are sleepers like Brian Robinson. Depends on where Kenneth Walker does after his surgery, how long it takes for him to get back. Dameon Pierce. You really don't know what direction the Ravens' backfield's going. It looks like Dobbins is going to be back, but possibly missing week 1. But they also have Edwards and Mike Davis there. You have the Jets with Breece Hall and Michael Carter. The 49ers' backfield's never really cleared. You have Connor out on the Cardinals, which he's a solid option. You definitely could take him probably third round. He'll probably fall to there, if not fourth. I know a lot of people are probably going to discount him, but you got to take Uncle Lenny whenever you can. Try to get him as low as a value as you can because you can stack your team around him. I know a lot of people have been sort of kind of just avoiding him, but he won a lot of people championships last year. I probably would only draft 3 running backs in a row just because of how deep receivers are. And plus, you have a lot of guys coming into their second year. You have Elijah Moore, who's sort of a breakout candidate, especially since Garrett Wilson's going to be there and healthy. Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have Darnell Mooney. He's going to do pretty well. You just have a lot of depth at receiver, and you don't really have to worry about it. Running back, on the other hand, if you don't have yourself at least 3 solid running backs, you're going to find a tough time to win this season.
Yeah, I'm totally there with you. And I do think it's also funny that Chase, you bring up not doing 0 running back just because maybe not doing 0 running back. That's not accurate, but not having a running back too, because I do remember how you won last season. And that was with a Rashad Penny waiver pickup as your RB2. And that took you to the promised land. So there is that chance of it. But in terms of like 0 running back or trying to like wait on running back, I think it's really foolish. And I don't really know why people do it anymore. I mean, if you look at like the first, I'll say like the first 20 or so running backs, maybe there's like 18 guys that I like in like that top kind of tier. If you don't get like 2 of them, you're probably going to be screwed at running back too. Like that's just the reality of it. Now you can always land some sleeper guys. I think if you're going to wait on running back, or even if you do wait, but anyone later on, I think everyone should be going after rookie backs. I think Dameon Pierce, I think Brian Robinson, Isaiah Spiller, Zamir White. Like if you can get like 2 of those guys, one of those 4 is definitely going to be great this year. This happens every single season. One of the guys that gets drafted later on in the draft ends up being pretty good. So I would say always try to get like 2 of those guys maybe. But in terms of like Isaac Chase, you guys were talking about like drafting running back early, maybe getting a Derrick Henry or Uncle Lenny and like a Javonte Williams, like 2 of those guys, I think that sets you up perfectly for this season. I think if you don't do it, and also Eric says he's going to lose his draft out of this team. Real nice confidence, Eric. But no, I think that you got to go running back heavy early, and I think you can wait. We'll also talk about tight end a little bit. That's another position I think you should draft early. But then in terms of wide receiver, there's literally no reason to draft a guy early on. Like I would love to have a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase or Cooper Kupp, but it's very likely that one of those guys is in a pretty similar tier to a guy that gets drafted in like the 7th round. Look at every single season. There's always quarterbacks, wide receivers that emerge, such as Jamar Chase and Deebo Samuel last year that weren't getting drafted nearly as early, and then they end up finishing top 5 at the position. Whereas running back, you kind of know who the top dogs are year in and year out outside of injury, I would say. So I'm all on board for drafting running back early. In terms of wide receiver, I think that we all probably – I feel like we have pretty similar strategies when it comes to drafting, but what's your guys' kind of ideas for wide out? I brought up that I would like to draft guys later on. I'll bring up a bunch of those names in a little bit, but Isaac, who are you targeting in your fantasy drafts this year?
I mean, like I said, if I'm top 5, I'm taking Justin Jefferson. I'm really all in on Justin Jefferson, man. Like you're getting a new coach that comes from the Rams who made Cooper Kupp the wide receiver 1, one of the most historical fantasy seasons from a wide receiver ever. And he's going to Minnesota with a guy that's skill-wise, talent-wise, better than Cooper Kupp. This guy's put up 2 back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons. I feel like I don't really got to say more. He's proven that that's sort of his floor. 2 1,400-yard seasons in a row. So you're getting almost 100 yards every game out of him. The touchdowns are going to go up. The targets are going to stay the same as usual. Adam Thielen's only aging, and Adam Thielen's going to catch a lot of touchdowns. That's what he normally does. But they're going to start moving away from him soon. I'm really all in on Justin Jefferson. Another receiver I really like, Mike Evans. Really like Mike Evans. Remember Chris Godwin's coming off a pretty major injury. Who's the guy? Russell Gage is the second wide receiver, so it's like nothing to be scared, nothing to really worry about. Uncle Lenny. I'm not big on Uncle Lenny, I won't lie. I think that was kind of a fluke. But yeah, I'm not a big Uncle Lenny guy. So and especially because I know that O line in Tampa Bay is starting to get a little injured, so it's starting to get a little worrisome. So I think a lot of targets going to go Mike Evans' way. Granted, he's been consistent year in, year out. So Mike Evans, of course, is very, very safe. Jerry Jeudy's another guy I'm pretty big on. Jerry Jeudy is coming into the league with really coming into his third year with his first actual quarterback. And I think a lot of targets are going to go his way. I think him and Cortland Sutton are going to have very similar seasons. I think Cortland Sutton's going really high. I think he's going too high in redraft leagues in terms of just where you're getting him, like third, fourth round. I think he's going too high. If I'm in one of those leagues, I'm taking Jerry Jeudy in the later rounds rather than Cortland Sutton in those early rounds. I think the biggest difference is going to be that Cortland Sutton's going to catch a lot more touchdowns just because he does get used a lot in the red zone. And but I think Judy's going to be the yards, the short yardage guy, the yards after the catch kind of guy like that. But I want to go back to running back real quick, just because I forgot to mention DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, a lot of people will seem out on DeAndre Swift because he's on the Lions. He's produced very good on the Lions the past 2 years, is now running behind what everyone's saying is a top 5 offensive line. They got Jameson Williams. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got weapons. They got DJ Chark. They got weapons to help take away the focus from DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is, outside of the top 5 guys or so, probably has the most realistic chance at like a top 3, top 5 finish for sure. So I'm all in on DeAndre Swift, but there's a lot of wide receivers to be all in on, man. I mean, Stephon Diggs, you're going to get your guaranteed 160 plus targets. But I'll look for some sleeper wide receivers right now because I can't remember off the top of my head.
So I like Pittman a lot, just because, better quarterback play than last year, and he still had a relatively really good season last year. I think he's going to get a few more touchdowns, stay around, maybe 1,100 yards, maybe get 8 touchdowns on the year. Devontae Smith, he has A.J. Brown to take a lot of pressure away from him. However, with that, it's also probably going to come some less targets, but both of them are both home run hitters. I feel like Devontae Smith is a little bit better of a route runner. He's going to be, less injury prone than A.J. Brown has been the last few years. And then one guy that I'm very high on is outside of Stephon Diggs is Gabriel Davis. He slots in to be the immediate number 2. They don't have Cole Beasley anymore. They don't have their number 3 option that was there. I'm forgetting his name right now. So he instantly slots into the number 2. There's going to be targets to take in that area. Gabe Davis is going to fill that in. He also sort of broke out towards the playoffs. We saw the 4 touchdown game, 200 yards. I don't think that's a fluke. A lot of reports have said that his route running has looked better than it ever has been. So I'm going all in on Gabe Davis. So that's one of the guys in there. But he mentioned it, Amon-Ra St. Brown is out there. I don't know how I feel about Elijah Moore. I truly like him. I kind of rode him through the playoffs last year, so I have a soft spot for him, but I do think he's going to break out again this year. Players I would avoid, Kenny Golladay, 100%. I used to be one of the biggest Kenny Golladay truthers, but I don't know what happened last year. I'd still be wary of Allen Robinson. He's in a much better situation now, but what we did see last year on the the Bears was quite concerning. You can also go after guys like Deontay Johnson. I don't know how George Pickens is going to do. He's the 3rd option in that offense. Number 1 is obviously Deontay. He is a massive target machine. I like Chris Godwin, but I wouldn't take him too high. I still think he's going to have a really good season. He was one of the main targets in Tampa Bay. I know they have Julio. I know they have Russell Gage now, but he's still going to do his thing in the middle of the field.
Sorry, there's a siren going by right as I was about to talk. But no, I like a lot of guys that you guys are saying. I'm also a big fan of Mike Evans. I think Chris Godwin and Mike Evans can both exist in that offense, though I do kind of wonder what it's going to look like with Julio Jones in the mix. The big question, of course, for Julio Jones is he going to be healthy? Because the last season he was healthy was same year that Michael Thomas was healthy, and Julio was great. Difference with those two guys is that Julio's quite a bit older. Julio's had quite a bit more injury history, so I think that's why you do end up seeing Michael Thomas go early, and I do think it's fair, even though Julio Jones is probably my favorite wide receiver I've ever watched in my life. So I'm big time Julio truther, and I still think like it could be it for Julio. It could be. But no, I think that a lot of the guys that you guys are bringing up are really interesting. I think that, you're looking at that Bills offense, all those targets lost from Cole Beasley. They did add OJ Howard, but in terms of who's there to kind of take over, I think Gabe Davis is definitely the guy. So I think that he's a guy that could be, he's a big like kind of boomer bust player. Stephon Diggs, that he's going to take a lot of targets. But that whole offense is going to be really cool how it plays out. James Cook is there now, so they have a better pass catching back. But I mean, like you could see that offense really playing out a bunch of different ways. But I mentioned it before. Don't draft wide receiver early. Why would you draft AJ Brown or T Higgins when you can wait like 4 or 5 rounds and go and snag Chris Olave, Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, Adam Thielen, Gabe Davis, like Robert Woods, who let's look at T Higgins. T Higgins is a wide receiver 2 in an offense where the best or one of the best wide receivers exists. Like we all saw Jamar Chase take over the league last year. Tyler Boyd is still there. Joe Mixon's still there. Like there are so many mouths to feed. And it seems like a lot of people are kind of knocking Jamar Chase for that when it's like, dude, the guy to knock is probably T. Higgins. Like Jamar Chase might take up more of the offense this season. So I think that there's a lot of guys that are going like that mid-tier, like DJ Moore. We've seen how bad that offense has been. I know you like him, Chase, but Michael Pittman, I'm a little scared of Michael Pittman. And I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I think you're definitely like right there with your evaluation. But I do think it's a big difference going just for his value, not for the team winning, for going from Carson Wentz to Matty Ice, because we saw what happened with Julio Jones in Atlanta when Julio was still balling out. Matt Ryan couldn't give him the deep ball, and that was the thing. That's Michael Pittman's game. So that's I do have a little bit concern there, and it's not like I don't like the guys, but I just think that you can get guys way later in the draft where it's just like, oh, this guy might be a stud, and you can just snag a bunch of those guys, end up getting a lot of value. Michael Thomas is ranked 58th. 58th, man, and he's not going to miss that long, and he's going to come back, and he's going to be in an offense where he's very clearly the number 2. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's going to have a similar target like share when he's on the field to a guy like T. Higgins. So I just think that there's a lot of value to be had later in the board. You guys also talked about the Denver Broncos offense, which I think is so interesting, and I think it's so hard to project. And for that reason, I'm not going to take Cortland Sutton, and I'm not going to take any of their guys until way late in the draft and KJ Hamler is available. Because KJ Hamler just might be a guy that turns into a 2 and plays that Tyler Lockett role for Russell Wilson in that offense. Do I think he's going to do it? Not necessarily, but I think there's a chance he could. And I think the other guys are going to just be fighting for targets. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, like we don't know who's going to be the one there, and they're both getting drafted like they're going to be close to the one. So I'm a little bit concerned there. I also think they're going to run the football a ton. I'm a big Javonte Williams guy, so that's another part of that offense. So I just think for wide receiver, like, there's guys you can get early. There's the CeeDee Lambs, the Mike Evans, the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. If there's a guy you just don't like, a Devontae Adams, right? Those superstars. But if you don't get those superstars, I don't think there's a reason to draft any of those mid-tier guys, because I think if you're looking at talent-wise, you're going to find these guys later on in the draft are pretty similarly talented to the guys early on the draft, but maybe they're just not expected to be as large of a role in the offense. And honestly, it's hard to tell right now early on in the season what those roles are going to be. And I mentioned guys like, Deebo Samuel that take that huge jump, right? That happens every season where like some of these guys that are later on in the draft, you can just see them, oh, look, this guy exploded. And I also think another big reason why I'm not big on drafting wide receiver early is because if like the difference of like a running back 1 to a running back 2 and a wide receiver 1 to a wide receiver 2 is way different. Like you're getting way more points out of your running back. So that's why I think you got to capitalize on running back early. But those are some of the guys I like. I think there's so many good wide receivers in the league too. So that also makes it really hard. Like I think when we were younger, I think it was easier to tell who are those great wide receivers in the league. Now it feels like there's like 30, 40 wide receivers that are as talented as like some of the guys that were in the top 10 when we were younger kids. I don't know. That's just me maybe, but I really do feel like that. So I think we'll go over a couple other position groups before we take off here, but tight end. What are you guys thinking? Unless there's anything else you want to add on wideout.
I'll talk about
one thing.
Go ahead, Isaac. I'll go next.
I was just gonna say I'm avoiding Liggett and Metcalf like they're the plague. I do not trust Drew Lock. I don't trust anyone in the receiving area of the Seahawks at all. I'm avoiding any receivers or tight ends on the Seahawks like the plague. I do not trust Drew Lock as a quarterback.
I agree.
Same. Yeah. Tight end. Oh man, people were taking Kelsey too early, bro. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. People were taking Kelsey way too early. Kelsey, I see in some drafts going the same area as Diggs. Bro, just take Diggs. Just take Diggs. Diggs is getting 160 targets and doesn't look washed. I watched every single Kelsey game last year because I had him on my team. I was severely disappointed almost every single game. He looked slow. He had poor release. It was really, I was like astonished because I was like, wow, I never thought I'd see the day Travis Kelsey looks like this. And now he's surrounded by Juju. I think Juju's actually going to have a pretty decent year. If you're able to get Juju in the later rounds, go ahead, snag him. Think he's got some upside. I don't think he's going to win you your league or anything, but kind of a solid flex. Nice to have on your bench knowing he has that kind of upside. Other than that, I'm not taking a Chief. I love Patrick Mahomes. Weird to say as a Chargers fan. I guess another thing I would say, and kind of contradicts what I'm saying, but bro, take guys in the AFC West. They play each other. The Chargers are going to play the Broncos, Chiefs, and the Raiders total of 6 times. It goes for same for the rest of them. That's probably going to be a good 4 to 6 shootouts that you're going to have players involved in. You want every bit of those offenses, such as Mike Williams, because Mike Williams might just explode in 3 or 4 of those. Keenan Allen's probably going to get his in all of those because he always does. Same thing with Eckler. Same thing with Javonte, Judy, Sutton, Devontae, Juju. I guess Kelsey. I just think Kelsey's going too early. I'd take Kelsey back end second, maybe early third, but realistically, I'm taking Kelsey. I'm taking him mid third. And that's going to be around the area where Evans, Brown, Higgins, Sutton, that's going to be the area where they're going, where I'd personally have Kelsey. But some people are taking Kelsey with their first or second overall pick. And me personally, I can't justify that. But other than that, Andrews, younger, probably going a little later than Kelsey. If you really want a tight end, he's kind of in a similar situation. Just him and one other guy, essentially. Just the difference in quarterback. Lamar's a very good quarterback, but Mahomes is better. Who's another guy? Honestly, that's kind of it for tight ends, bro. Kyle Pitts is with Mariota. Well, nah, I'm not in on Waller. I mean, I think if you can get him on a discount, yeah, he'll be good. Just the thing is that Renfro's pretty good. Adams is pretty good. He's like a third option for Derek Carr. He's gonna throw for a lot of yards. Maybe a lot of touchdowns this year. I'm actually kind of higher on Derek Carr than any other year. But Waller might be a good value. I think he's okay. But tight end, if you're not getting like Kelsey, Andrews, Waller, or Pitts, maybe if you feel comfortable with Kittle, you can wait. Because the difference between tight end 6 and tight end like 12 to 8 to like 15 is not that big. But just go for your touchdown to guys with a bunch of upside. I mean, Gerald Everett, I just drafted Gerald Everett thinking, all right, one guy goes down, he becomes another option that last year with the Seahawks didn't look too bad. I mean, he did some, but I mean, I think he's got a lot of touchdown upside with the Chargers. Who's another guy? Cole Kmet, another one of those guys that, there's not much competition for targets, but I think my strategy going into this year is just draft guys in good offenses because last year I had DJ Moore, crappy offense, 4 touchdowns. Terry McLaurin gets his yards, crappy offense, only a few touchdowns. You want the touchdowns to be there. So that's why I say grab your guys in the AFC West. Those are going to be your shootouts. You want those touchdowns. Oh, I forgot to talk about
I think Zach Ertz is going to be fine.
Look at his touchdowns, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He'll get his touchdowns. I think Dawson Knox will get his touchdowns. You mentioned Everett. Cole Kmet's always a solid option. I don't know how I feel about Higbee. I drafted Higbee last year just because, Stafford, he has the big arm. He usually goes to his tight ends in the end zone. Hawkinson might have a pretty good year, but, he's going to be he's probably going to be like tight ends 5 and 6. And like Isaac said, there's not going to be too much of a difference between 5 and 12. But if you wanted to go to like higher upside, Hawkinson, Ertz, Knox, because Knox is in a good offense. Hunter Henry possibly. I know people are still pretty high on Dalton Schultz. There's just a lot of mouths to
Oh,
feed in that offense.
I didn't even
Oh,
get to talk about Schultz. Go for it, Chase. I'll
yeah.
talk about him after.
There's hold up. There's one other guy I want to mention just because reports have been nothing but positive throughout training camp and the games. It's Dallas Goedert. He has looked good. He's had a connection with Jalen Hurts. This is going to be their second or third year working together. I like him. He's a very athletic tight end. You traded Zach Ertz away for him to be the tight end one. I don't know how well that's going to work. I do like him. I think he has a lot of upside, but I wouldn't reach for him.
You want me to go before you talk about Schultz, Isaac?
I could talk about him real quick. I mean, I think
Yeah, go ahead.
it's kind of tough. I actually think the Cowboys are going to be in a position where they're going to be losing a lot of games. They're going to be forced to have Dak, sling the rock just because Tyron Smith just suffered an injury that's going to put him out until December. They already have a crappy O-line as is, and it's getting weaker and weaker. Their new starting left tackle protecting the blind side of Dak is now a fourth-round pick. So not only does kind of the offensive stock go down unless you're like a CD Lamb, but I mean, like Zeke's stock goes down in a sense. Maybe not Dalton Schultz, just because he's kind of like a security blanket, short target guy. He'll get his targets. He'll get a little bit of yardage. But the only guys I'm comfortable taking really is, I guess, CD. But in the event that, the top 5 tight ends are gone, Dalton Schultz is the next guy I feel most comfortable with, just because you look at the way the Cowboys offense is operated with Schultz. It's a lot of short yardage, out routes, short yardage, and, just stopping in the middle of the field, getting his targets. And he gets a few touchdowns, but now he's a second option in that offense until Gallup is back. In terms of passing, of course, Zeke is going to be, he's supposed to be the workhorse. But yeah, I mean, I like Schultz for sure.
Yeah, so in a draft that us three actually recently did, I was kind of at the end of the draft and I was looking between either Ertz or Schultz. Those were my decisions. And I was like, all right, I'm going to give Schultz by like a hair, but I kind of like either of those guys if you don't get one of those top tier tight ends. But Isaac, you brought up Travis Kelce, and I'm going to be honest with you, I could not disagree more, bro. I'm trying to get as much Travis Kelce as possible.
You love Travis Kelce.
Like, if I'm drafting late first, if it's a snake draft and I'm like, let's say it's 12 teams, right? And I'm in like 9th or 10th spot, I'm trying to snag him at the beginning of the second round. I'm trying to take him that early because I don't think anyone else is really that worth it to draft. I think, like, yes, you can talk about Andrews. You can talk about Waller. They're great players. They're awesome. Waller, we just brought up all the targets kind of coming there. With Andrews, I think something that doesn't get brought up enough is that, like, when his numbers with Lamar Jackson have been, like, borderline top 5 almost exclusively. Yeah. His numbers were garbage time with Huntley. Those were a lot of his points last year, and he had some big games with Lamar. But like Lamar and Mark Andrews have always had like a bunch of like big games kind of scattered throughout the year, but he's not usually scoring that high. Another thing is they're still going to run a bunch of 2 tight end sets. Isaiah Likely. I don't know if you guys have really heard that much about Isaiah Likely. We talked about him on the channel a little while back. This dude is a stud. He is a monster. He was drafted in like the 4th round by the Ravens this past season. He's going to be really good. He's going to actually eat up a lot of targets in the middle of the field. So, like, in terms of where targets are getting eaten up, if there's another guy that's like a really good player in the middle of the field for that offense, I'm a little bit skeptical. Whereas, like, I guess for the Chiefs, like Juju will eat up some stuff there. Like Juju's more of a short yardage guy. But we also know that Travis Kelce is going to get his. Like that's my thought. Oh, yeah. So he's like the only guy where I really feel that comfortable with him, like with going with him early. But he is getting older, so like that's always going to be a thing of like, and that's the rough part with football because when you're cooked, like bro, you are cooked. That's the thing that usually happens where it's like, okay, this guy's like done. So I hope that's not the case for Travis Kelce just because he's been so sweet for so long, but he is getting up there in age, so it is something to definitely monitor. But those are like the only guys I really like. I'm a Niners fan. I do not like drafting George Kittle. I'll say that right now. I think that's a bad move. But I think you should probably go after, if you don't, my personal thought is if you do not get Travis Kelce, and I wish that Kyle Pitts had a better quarterback because I would be all over Kyle Pitts. Mm-hmm. But if you do not get Travis Kelce, go take a Schultz or an Ertz or someone like that later on in the draft and just don't really focus on it too much. But I am of the group that I think you should go and snag Kelsey in the second round if possible.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Kelsey's gonna produce. I just don't think he's gonna produce like if you look at the fantasy pros, like the tiers and everything or the rankings, it's like, all right, Kelsey's are at the ranked 13th right now in half PPR. At 12 is Swift. At 11 is Diggs. 14 is Adams. 15 is Kamara. 16 is Barkley, Lamb, Jones. Like me personally, I would rather have Jones, Kamara, Swift, and Diggs. Now in the event, because I think in the first round they actually might be gone. Like realistically, they're probably gone. So other than that, yeah, I can probably justify taking Kelsey. I don't know, man. I have it because it's not like the Travis Kelsey of old, like where he's guaranteed to finish the tight end one. Like Mark Andrews almost passed him last year. He's not guaranteed to finish as the tight end one. His separation went down. His yards per route went down. But like you said, he's going to get his targets because he's really the only reliable guy there. And in a Patrick Mahomes offense, if you're the only guy, you're going to get fed. So I mean, I wouldn't fade Kelsey. I just think if the guys that I said are on the board, I would personally take them. But other than that, I don't really have anything else. I mean, I guess I could talk about some guys that I'm personally targeting real quick. Just, some names. I'll tell you who I'm avoiding. I'm avoiding Debo for sure. I think Debo is going too high. I told Chase and Matt in our salary cap draft, I am nominating Debo because I think he's going to go for a lot. And I don't want him. And he didn't go for as much as I thought, but he still kind of went for a lot. He went for around 40 something, and I got AJ Brown for 20, Evans for 24, Higgins for 20, Sutton for 14. So I was like, all right, I'd much rather have that than spending 40 for Debo. So yeah, I mean, that's a guy I'm avoiding, but guys I'm going after: Swift for sure, Diggs, Jefferson. But those are, of course, all top guys. When you look at the rest of them, Evans, I'm for sure going for Evans, Keenan, Higgins, but I'm avoiding DJ Moore. Yeah, that's about
Baker
it.
will
Though.
be the quarterback.
Who?
It looks like
Baker?
Sam
Yeah,
Darnold just killed with a foot injury.
Yeah, I know it'll be Baker. I'm off DJ Moore. Dude's a stud. Dude's a freaking stud. I mean, gets his 1,200 yard seasons, but yeah, he just needs his touchdowns, man. So I'm not like saying he sucks or anything. I just think 4 touchdowns last year, 4 touchdowns the year before. Granted, much worse quarterbacks. So he'll get his this year. He'll do better, but around the area he's going, I probably have other guys.
Are there any quarterbacks you guys are like really wanting to get later on?
Trey area, bro. Trey Lance for sure. I mean, who cares if he starts off slow throwing the football, bro? Jalen Hurts sucks at throwing the football, and he was still the number 2, number 3 overall quarterback. Why? Because he can run. He can run. And I would assume Trey Lance might be a little better at throwing the football than Jalen Hurts. But Trey Lance, even out of college, has always been a great rusher. Take Trey Lance if you can in the later rounds. That's really the only guy that I'm thinking, all right, if there's a late round guy that I have to have for quarterback, it's him. Other than that, I'll wait and take like a Kirk, Stafford, maybe Trevor Lawrence as your backup.
But bro, I was about to say, if you're going to go after another guy, you go after T-Law, bro. You go after the talent. Because, dude, he's going to get – okay, their offense is a lot better. Like, they didn't make any crazy upgrades, but their offense is better. Maybe not a lot better. It's better, and it's you can work with it, and they're not going to have the terrible Urban Meyer coaching that we saw. He's going to rack up garbage points. I love T-Law, bro. It reminds me of it honestly reminds me of Mahomes in that second year, maybe like a Carson Wentz where it's like, hey, bro, don't worry about last year. Like they didn't really play or whatever the situation was, but it's going to be his year. I feel like I like him honestly. I mean, you know how much I love Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is a big boom player next season, but bro, I gotta give me some T-Law, man. I don't have enough of it. That's a problem, but I like T-Law a lot.
Oh God, I just had a guy in my head. I can't remember. What do you guys think about the Steelers situation? I'm probably avoiding Steelers quarterbacks. They
I'll
have the
take.
weapons to succeed. I just don't know how much I trust whoever's at the helm. God, I had a guy in my head, and now I can't remember his name.
Is it famous Jameis? I'll start the
Yes,
question.
it was famous Jameis.
No
Thank
way,
you. Thank
really?
God. Yes, it was famous Jameis. I was thinking I would probably take some Jameis Winston. He's surrounded by probably the best cast he's had in a minute. He was when he had Evans, when he had Godwin, he threw for 5,000 yards. Albeit he threw for a lot of interceptions, but he's gonna have Michael Thomas, Olave, Landry, and Alvin Kamara. He's in a position to succeed. I would probably take Jameis Winston in the very end. I'd probably avoid Stafford this year just because of the elbow injury. We don't really know how much is that's going to affect his deep ball. And for Stafford, he is known for his deep ball, and it's going to hurt him if he can't throw it.
Yeah, he's got some sort of tendonitis. I don't know what the reports are. I mean, I'm sure next time we'll do it, we talk about it. We'll have some report on Matthew Stafford, but no, there's not really any quarterbacks I'm zeroed in on, man. I mean, I think if you're taking a quarterback before round 6, you're kind of screwing yourself. Yeah, seriously, how the hell are the Padres blowing this lead, dude? It was 6-0, and now it's 6-5. The one day we're getting offense, Joe Musgrove's blowing it. But
Well, only 2 of them are earned.
Oh, interesting. See, I have the game on right here, but since we're doing this, I'm obviously paying more attention to this. What was I gonna say? I mean, I'm trying to think of guys that people are all like out on that I'm kind of in on.
I want to kind of look at it too. I think for quarterback, I will say I'm all the way with you guys. The only guy you brought up, Stafford, dude. I think it's so hard, Chase, because like I want to be like, yo, Stafford's gonna be top 3, top 5. I think he's gonna put up a ridiculous season.
Oh.
But like, if you're gonna draft a quarterback early and then he has an elbow injury, like that's gonna hurt you. It's gonna hurt you in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no reason to draft a quarterback that early. I think T-Law and Winston are probably the guys I'd target later. Derek Carr's going at quarterback 15.
Yeah, dude, you could take Carr safely. Have
you seen the offense?
Yeah. This dude throws for a lot of yards. He's gonna get more touchdowns this year. Jacobs is trash. Go for it with Derek Carr. Yeah, definitely.
That being said, avoid Jacobs.
Avoid Jacobs for sure. I'm avoiding Jacobs. Yeah. Just because I legit think he's the 4th option. I think Renfro's better. I think Waller's better. I think Adams is better. But I think a lot of people are avoiding that. Honestly, I was avoiding for a little while, and I kind of understand. I just drafted him, so clearly I wasn't avoiding him. AJ Brown. I think a lot of people are scared about the situation. I would say, people are saying he's going to a run first offense that, runs the ball a lot, this and that. He's not going to get a lot of targets. His running back in Tennessee was Derrick Henry. That dude soaked up carries. Honestly, I don't know. I know the Eagles had probably like the highest run rate, but I would assume the Titans were top 5 in that range when Derrick Henry was playing. Maybe even number 1 while he was playing. So it's not like the situation's really changing. It is the same situation. The only thing now is that AJ Brown's going to be the number 1 option in his offense, whereas in Tennessee he was the number 2. So with AJ Brown, yeah, injury, knee, whatever it is, but when you're looking at it from just a talent standpoint, one of the best guys in terms of yards after the catch, gets his he had some troubles with touchdowns, but I think this year, now that he's really the number 1, Jalen Hurts is improving in his passing. God, dude, I'm so scared for this game. Jalen Hurts.
I know. I just saw the bases loaded comment.
Bases loaded, dude. Jalen Hurts isn't. Oh, thank God. Jalen Hurts is improving in his passing. But yeah, I think if you're in the back end of your draft and you're in the 3rd, 4th round, you're at the turn. I think you can take AJ Brown just because he does have a lot of upside. I still think he's gonna get more targets in Philadelphia. Understand if you're scared, just because but like I said, it's the same situation. But he has an injury history. Understand if you're scared, but I do like me some AJ Brown.
So I got one last question before I think we head off, because I think we're right about there. What do you guys think about sort of the Dolphins receiving core or any Dolphins players? Are you like super high on them? I personally am not. The only one I would be super high on is Waddle, just because he was a target machine last year. He was in the short to intermediate routes. I don't trust Tua's long ball, so I'm not super high on like Waddle going for long touchdowns, but he was sort of the touchdown guy. He would get 8 to 10 targets a game towards the latter half of the season. That would probably be the one guy I'm high on. I think Hill's value took a major hit, and I don't think a lot of people are taking into account how sometimes bad Tua's long ball can be.
So I'm gonna go a little bit different direction.
Me too.
So Hill's like mid wide receiver 1, Waddle's like mid wide receiver 2. That's where they're ranked right now. I think Hill's way better. And I don't want to like rip Waddle, like I don't want to be like that, but Mike McDaniel, we saw what he just did with Debo.
Exactly.
That's with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like and like it's not like, okay, I don't think they're going to be used the same way. Like Debo's way more physical of a player, but he does have that gadget aspect to him where it's like, oh yeah, we can put him back, but we can do this. I fully expect that to be the case with Tyreek Hill. And I think they're going to do some of it with Waddle, but I think Hill's going to very clearly be the focal piece. Like they just broke this dude off. Like they want to make him the featured guy. And if you just get him in open space, if you can just get him in open space, he is going to score so many touchdowns. So I like Hill. And like Isaac, I think you brought up like who are the guys that you're kind of like looking at that people don't really like. That's
Hill.
kind of Hill. Hill's kind of one of those guys that's early on for me where he could slide. And like, I mean, talk about a downgrade, bro. Like Mahomes to Tua. That's why. Like I totally understand, but just in what his usage is going to be and how he's going to be used, I think it could be. I think he could still be there. The big thing is we're not going to see him on prime time balling out with Patrick Mahomes as much. So it's going to always feel like it's not the same thing. Like that's just in my opinion, that's what I think it'll look like. But I think in terms of numbers and stuff, I think he'll be relatively similar to what he was in Kansas City.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a little bit of a drop off in those numbers, but I also think that you're drafting him kind of like maybe not at his floor, but pretty close to his floor. I think his floor is like still a low end wide receiver 1. And it's easy to remember or easy to forget that Tyreek Hill is not really just a deep ball option. Of course, his speed and the arm of Patrick Mahomes kind of shows that, but he's also very good underneath, and he's got the speed to be able to break off some really long runs. So I'm actually not too low on Tyreek. I actually think AJ Brown and Tyreek are kind of in a similar situation, going to an offense that last year had pretty solid rookies that put up good numbers. Like a wide receiver sort of tight end, except Gesicki sucks and Goddard is kind of good. Gesicki doesn't suck. I think he's like a solid receiving tight end, but in terms of everything else, he's kind of trash, like blocking, stuff like that. So I just don't think he's going to see the field as much. Decent running backs. I think AJ Brown and Tyreek are in very similar situations. So honestly, I'm not really shying away from either of them, just because I think right around where you're drafting them is kind of where they're going to finish, which is very safe. You kind of want that security in your wide receivers, because the difference between the wide receiver 5, wide receiver 9 is not going to be too drastic. So I actually like both of them. It's just that in our draft, Tyreek went for a lot and AJ Brown didn't. So that's why I was going after AJ in ours. But with Tyreek, I'm not too low. I'm also not too low on Waddle. I mean, they're going to be the top 2 options in their offense. The touches got to go somewhere. So I think right around where you're drafting both of them is where they're both going to finish.
All right, well, sweet. I think that's probably gonna wrap it up. I think the only other thing to kind of bring up would be like defense or kicker. Draft them late.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter. Like your defenses are gonna move. They're gonna lose a guy.
Yeah,
like it doesn't really matter. Draft a defense that you like the most. Draft your favorite team's defense, unless you're like the Jets or someone like that. But like
I was going for the Colts week 1.
I like the Colts. Yeah, look for early schedules. Yeah, exactly.
Matchups.
Yeah, I would just play matchups on defense. I think that'll go a long way. Kicker, I hope you guys aren't playing with a kicker. I feel like I have some leagues where I'm with a kicker.
Take out your damn kicker.
Dude, put a punter in. I say put a punter in before the kicker. Or individual defensive player.
Yeah, IDP, another flex, another quarterback. Shoot, even another defense is better than a kicker.
Yeah, I don't know. The kicker's just way too random, but I don't know. I think that's probably all I got. draft your quarterbacks later, draft your tight ends later, unless you really like one of the or like the clear tight end one guys. Besides that, draft them later. Use the mid to late wide receivers to build out your roster, because those guys are going to be super clutch. And whatever you do not take zero running back, because you will be very upset that you ended up doing zero running back. But I think that's probably going to do it for this episode. So a little bit different from Friar Talk, talking about fantasy football. We're going to be doing this a lot on America's Finest Sports. I will comment that link below if you guys want to follow that stuff. I don't think we're going to be streaming another fantasy video on Friar Talk, but we are planning to do this in the future on AFS. So if you guys want to get that kind of stuff, get that football side of our sports commentary, then go ahead. But I think it's going to do it. As we've been talking, I think we hopped on the Padres were up 6-0, and now they are up 6-5. So we're going to have to go check this game out because it seemed like kind of a safe call to do it. Apparently not the move, but I think it's going to do it for tonight's stream. So thank you guys for hopping on, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon.